The one thing I do regret about January 6th was the thing that I am responsible for. I pepper sprayed a Capitol police officer out of anger and frustration at the situation. I'm not justifying my actions. I wish I could take them back. That one thing, I wish I can take it back. I was charged with 2 assaults. The second one never occurred. I am 100% guilty of the first. And what makes it worse, Kyle, is the officer that I am responsible for pepper spraying, he was actually not a bad guy. A, he didn't do anything wrong. And B, when he came to my trial, he didn't try to do the, oh my God, my life is ruined. It was what it was. It is what it is. He wasn't trying to get me sent to prison for life. So I feel extra bad about that situation because I think if there was one Capitol police officer that didn't deserve it, it was probably him.
All interviewers have their own style, and my style is to try to get to the point and to be intensely curious. And the key to interviewing is listening.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Today's Sunday Sit Down is going to be with Barry Ramey. We're going to be talking about J6. And I think this story is a little different than all the other ones we've covered. So I'm looking forward to hearing it. I'm going to let the man tell it in his own story. Barry, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. And here we go. Where do we start?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for being really flexible because I had to shove this back a couple of days. I just got off doing a 7-hour deposition yesterday, and you were accommodating. So thank you for being so patient with me.
No worries. I'm just glad to be here. I got to learn about you while sitting in federal prison, and somehow it ties into my story. So, here we are.
Okay. Just before we started the taping, we were only on here for a few seconds, and you said your girl helped set up your studio while you were in federal prison. Mm-hmm. You never expected that kind of thing. Let's talk about the beginning. Can we go back to the beginning? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Tell me about your family. Like, what kind of guy were you growing up? What kind of kid were you?
I was a latchkey kid, troubled youth, single parent home. Mom made all the sacrifices in the world just to make sure I had decent clothes to go to school. I ended up in juvenile hall. And from 12 to 17, I was in a maximum security juvenile hall program in Okeechobee, Florida, in South Florida, where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And when I got out, I decided to become a man and be a responsible member of my community and go to school and get a job, and I never got in trouble again. I tried to be a responsible adult and love my country, and then January 6th happened.
I want to dig into the juvenile hall because that's probably not something that everybody gets to experience or has to experience. Take your pick.
I hope not.
Tell me some of the things that led you there. What was it a progression? Was it one bad day, one mistake? What was it like?
It was a progression. I grew up in, the inner city, a single parent home. I didn't have much supervision, so I was free to roam the streets. And I had a two-part combination about me that was not very fruitful for growing up in inner city streets. One, I was chubby and I had a loud mouth. Two, I couldn't fight worth a damn. So between those two things, I got in a lot of trouble, and I ended up in juvenile hall the first time, and I had no idea how to defend myself. I had no idea of street culture. And the first day I was there, a young inner city youth punched me in the face for absolutely no reason. And
wait a minute, is young inner city youth, is that a euphemism for a young black kid?
It is.
Okay. And what was the racial demographic breakdown in juvie when you were there, you think?
I would say there was about 55 youth in my particular unit, and probably 4 of us were white.
That's a rough situation, I would imagine.
Yes.
I've got friends that grew up in that scenario, and they all learned how to fight. They all ended up pretty hard.
That's what happened very fast. So this individual punched me, and one of the guards asked me what happened. And what did I do? I didn't know any better, Kyle. I snitched. I said he did it. So the next 21 days of my life were consistent ass whoopings on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. There was a breaking point, and I began to fight back. And over time, I became good at it. And I was put in a situation because of the Florida court system. They gave me a chance. I would continue to get in fights at school, and I would continue to have charges pressed on me, and these charges would rack up and rack up. And now it came time for the judge to be like, look, kid, you're in trouble now. Instead of put me in a very maximum security kind of situation at first, they gave me a chance, and they put me in a residential program in Tampa, outside of Tampa, for wealthy kids, where kids with insurance got to go because their parents could afford it. Mine could not. The judge made the state pay for it. Well, I learned in an environment in juvenile hall, and now I was in a classy rich kid program in Tampa where they bred horses. And the first kid that looked at me wrong, I learned this behavior in juvenile hall that you fight. And now I'm in a predicament where these richy kids and wealthy kids, this isn't the environment you want to do that. So long story short, that ended the judge's sympathy for me, and he put me in a maximum security program, the big boy house. And I was not a big boy. I was only 13.
Oh my God. I didn't realize you were, okay, so that's very young then. What was the average age in there, you think?
Around 16, 17. They were actually able to hold you until you were 20 if you were in the system beforehand, before you turned that way. So there was some kids in there that were 20 and they weren't going home. They were going to serve out a prison sentence.
So you're 13 years old, surrounded by 16-year-olds, which is night and day, and there's some 20-year-olds hanging out in there.
Yes, and and as I learned, kids do not fear consequences, Kyle. They're fearless. They're wild animals.
Well, this is why the Marine Corps is so successful, and the average age is 19. It's we don't have like a well-developed sense of consequences as young people. So young men that go in the Marine Corps, that goes broadly, I think, for the military. Like young guys will go do really dumb stuff. They're too dumb to know they can't do it.
Well,
I think and Juvie has the same situation. Look, there's a pretty similar cross-section demographic there. Like half the guys I think I served with enlisted were they probably had a breaking point in their decision tree, and they chose to go be dummies with the military instead of being dummies somewhere else. And
well, the federal prison refers to juvenile hall as Spartan school.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where that came from?
I do not. But,
Spartan school.
Yeah, they're just the wild animals it breeds. They become animals. I mean, the place breeds animals. I'm speaking from experience.
Nasty. Okay, how long were you in? If you were 13 when you started?
I got out before my 18th birthday, about 3 or 4 weeks before my 18th birthday.
Holy crap! Did you do high school classes there?
I did. When I got out, unfortunately, I wanted to graduate high school, but it wasn't an option because of the circumstances. When I got out, I was still on technically juvenile's form of probation, and I couldn't afford to get in a school fight like every kid does every day. If the cops were to get called on me, I would get violated and get sent to actual adult prison. So I just got my GED and got out of that environment.
What's that GED stand for? Good
enough diploma.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got one buddy who's an FBI agent. He's the only FBI agent I know that has a GED.
And he's probably the best one out there.
He's outstanding. Yeah, he is. He just got bored of going to high school, so he decided to move on and go to college. And then they told him he needed a diploma to go to war. So he was like, whatever, GED it is. That is a truly rough kind of upbringing. And
tell
me more about it.
I became an adult. I had to do it on my own. Everything I learned on my own. My mom, God bless her soul, she's a sweet woman. She has made so many sacrifices for me. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be alive today. But she was not capable of A, raising a man, or B, doing it on her own. I have a sister. She had to work 2 jobs most of the time to take care of us. So it was left to me to figure out how I was going to be and who I was going to be as a person. And fortunately, I was able to figure out that I want to be a good person. I don't want to be somebody that hurts people or takes advantage of people. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. And that's the pursuit that I took.
That's fair. I want to dwell on it just a little bit longer, and then we'll get into more. Did you have any kind of mentors or role models that gave you any example of positive masculine figures? Or are you out there, were you reading? What was causing you what made you get out and say, I want to be a good person and not be a turd and go to federal prison and be one of the Spartans?
Well, I think it was because I didn't want to be my father. My father was a part-time guy, but he was to leave out all the details, he was a 1% biker, but I didn't know that aspect of him. Sure, he wasn't around in my life full time, but the parts that he did show up, when he did show up, he showed up as a dad. I better have gotten my butt to school. I was expected to have C's and B's on my report card. I wasn't allowed to smoke cigarettes or marijuana, or he would kick my butt if he was around. And I, even though it was part-time, I still had that part-time dad that demanded some things, and my mom would do a follow-up. So when I got 18 and I got out of juvenile hall, I learned about who my dad was. My dad was a biker. My dad had served federal time in prison, and my dad wasn't the greatest role model in the world, yet I found myself looking up to him and holding his words in regard. And when I realized and I learned that, well, this guy cheated on my mom and left her by herself, I didn't want to be that person. And I didn't want to be somebody that hurt women and pretended to be a good guy half the time. You know, I wanted to be better than my father. So I didn't, when I was young, I looked up to him. But as I grew up, I looked down on him and I knew what not to be. But I guess I still never had the answer of what I wanted to be. I just didn't want to be that.
Okay. I won't belabor it, but that's fascinating to me, especially the idea that I know some guys that are like that, where they just decide, I'm going to do not that, which is a choice. That is a decision path, I think, in a lot of ways, and reasonable. So you're 18, you're out of juvie, you got your good enough diploma. What comes next?
Well, I get involved in politics. At 18 years old, I'm now making phone calls, and I'm volunteering for the Bush and Cheney 04 campaign. Don't judge me.
Wait, why? Why were you with Bush and Cheney?
Well, because I looked at, I think a lot of my friends, I didn't agree with their opinions. A lot of my younger friends were, they were youth, they were like me, they were a little troubled, and they were all Democrats, and it was cool to be a Democrat. And I didn't find it like that. I was told that because I was poor and I lived in a poor neighborhood, I had to be a Democrat. And I didn't really buy it. And when 9/11 happened, I guess I got caught up in the facade, I guess it was, of the unity that it brought. Everyone was hanging their American flags out the window. Everyone was, America. And I always loved my country. I always wanted to fly the American flag, but it wasn't cool. It was starting to be uncool in the demographic of youth that I was surrounded by. And when 9/11 happened, it was cool again to be an American. And I put that on George Bush's term, and I put that in the Republicans' pocket, because the Democrats, it wasn't cool to be an American with them. I never liked that.
I hadn't thought about it going back that far, but I think all of us know that they're kind of there today. There's an awful lot of sort of disappointment in our country, and that's sort of expected from certain people. Yeah. I wouldn't have put it back so far as 2004. It's a good kind of time capsule with your reflection. So it was an unpaid gig. You're just doing volunteer work with them.
Yeah, just volunteering. And
what do those calls look like? What are those calls? You remember what they were like and who you were talking to?
A lot of dial tones. Hi, I'm calling on behalf of Bush and Click. So a lot of dial tones. But there was some receptive people. There was with the people that were receptive to my call were very fascinated that I was now only like 19 years old. So that would spawn a lot of positive conversations. But those people were probably voting for Bush anyway at that time. So,
well, you still got to get them to the polls. What was your pitch? How did you introduce yourself during that time, especially if you're just out of juvie?
Well, not like that, definitely. But
I bet you some people would have listened to see what the rest of the story was, though. Yeah,
that is true. There was kind of like a calling card, like a format that you would do. Hi, my name is so and so. I'm calling on behalf of this, and can we expect your vote? More robotic, thing that I would do, and very so often it would spawn a more depth conversation. But it was more of a robot call kind of format.
Okay. Did that grow into a paid position somewhere, or?
Not for that campaign. We didn't get into this, and we're going to have to. I've always been an independent, so to say, but I did go a little left leaning as I got a little older after 19. After Bush and Cheney, I was disgruntled. I I grew very bitter with the Iraq war. I didn't feel that it was honest. I didn't think that our reason for being there was honest. And it started to bring me over to the left a little. And then Occupy Wall Street happened. And I was ignorant to what socialism and Marxism and communism were. I knew the words, but I didn't know actually what they were and how they were showing up in American politics. And I almost allowed myself to be grabbed and pulled into this fake, outraged, oppressed America's bad thing. I caught myself challenging and looking at these, Occupy Wall Street things. And then you had this group Anonymous coming out that was challenging the government. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And then I started to look into it and I realized, man, I'm an idiot. This is stupid. This is all by design. And then that's when I really started to learn what socialism was and how this was it, how Occupy Wall Street was exactly that. And then then came the 2016 Donald Trump and the campaign leading up to that. And that's what hardlined me to realize that our issues facing this country, I believe, start at a fundamental love for this country. We have been stripped away from our pride, and it started with the national anthem not being sung in class every morning, and how it was wrong, and the youth were seeing it as a shame to be an American. And this is when I realized Marxism is here and it's happening. And when I watched what CNN did to Bernie Sanders when he was campaigning in his primary with Hillary Clinton, how they deliberately usurped it from him, and Donald Trump called that out. I watched that happen. I watched Donald Trump call it out as it was, and I watched these same media apparatuses spin that he was lying and he was wrong. And then I realized, well, this guy, there's more to this guy that what the media's telling me. And from there, I never really looked back. The veil was off. I seen through the bullshit, and here I am.
Tell me about 04, you're campaigning, Bush Cheney. 08, that's the Obama and what, McCain? Is that right?
Yeah, I was still a McCain person.
Were you?
Yeah, I was 08. I didn't do much volunteering, but I was, I showed up in the Republican primaries. I showed up for McCain and Palin. I was all the way McCain and Palin.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then it came. I was never really a huge Obama fan, but again, I was ignorant to the inner workings of the deep state. I didn't understand they were all heads of the same beast. And so with Obama's reelection, I've always hated Romney. I can't stand him. I know about his history, his family's history, never a big fan. So very reluctantly and very shamefully, I casted a vote for Obama's reelection. And I say this, no one's ever going to make me feel worse than I've already done to myself. But I say this to show and highlight the transition that I went through and why, Trump's campaign was so important to bringing back and instilling a love for America, because I was ignorant. I was ignorant to what was going on, and I was ignorant to what socialism was.
At the end of the day, and you remember this because you're older than 15. There was a time in this country where we didn't talk about politics at all. It really wasn't that exciting to most people. So McCain spoke at my college graduation, and my dad and I looked at each other and said, if this guy ever runs for president, we won't vote for him. We're going to vote for the other guy, whoever it is. So we both voted Obama in 2008. And, it's neither here nor there. I think he was sweeping the country with it. The second time around, when he was going, guns were getting more expensive and ammo, and I saw it. So I was on the other side of the coin on that election than you. And not because I have any love of Romney, but that wouldn't have made us not friends. That wouldn't have made us not able to talk to each other. That's something that's relatively new. I think in the last probably 10 years, it's actually been a Donald Trump thing. Like people broke their minds the first time, the second time, and the third time that he ran for president in a way that I didn't experience in my life. I'm guessing you didn't either. It wouldn't have you wouldn't have canceled a date. You wouldn't have canceled a friendship over it. You wouldn't have stopped talking to a family member, I have to imagine.
No, that was the nail. That was the nail in the coffin for me, actually. I was previously deeply involved. A lot of people find this funny, in the Burning Man community. Okay. I don't know if you know what Burning Man is.
I do, but will you explain it for people who don't?
It's a crazy, from the outside looking in, it looks like a giant hippie, drug fueled sex fest in the middle of the desert in northern Nevada. And that's a small part of it, but there's a lot more to it. It's essentially an art festival where people build a city, an entire city for 7 days out of art. And on the seventh day, they burn it all to the ground, leaving no trace. And it's a carnival put on by the people that attend it. It used to be a very libertarian event. It started off that way, but slowly, as everything else in the world, Democrats infiltrated it and destroyed it and ruined it. But I digress. So, I was very heavily involved in that. And there's not a lot of Trump supporters that would come from that type of scene. Sure. And so during Trump's campaign, there was a lot of friends of mine. I started to see these stories come out, and somebody from that community who happens to be a very wealthy Jamaican individual posted a story that I learned through his feed on Facebook. During 4th of July one year, a Mexican man was attacked, and the assailants said to him, "Go back to where you came from." That was the headline. All right, that was the story. Well, this individual was really pushing it. You see, America, KKK, and all those euphemisms they love to use. Well, then a story came out that it was 3 rather large black women that attacked this guy. And this individual took that story down off his Facebook page. And I went back to him and said, "Hey, what about that?" He just denied it. "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw that story in my life," and just blatantly lied to my face. And so I made a comment about how I thought that was, telling of the times, I guess. And somebody made a comment back to me, a friend of mine that I've known for a really long time, that if I'm considering supporting Trump, that I'm either a white supremacist or I approve of white supremacy. And I really made no mention about supporting Trump, just calling out that this individual's behavior. And this person that said this to me not only has known me for a long time, but they actually live, their roommate is my ex-girlfriend, somebody that I'm still currently friends with, who's a black woman. And so you're calling me a white supremacist now because I think I might be voting for Trump. And that's when I realized that there's a serious issue. And being a stubborn person, I almost doubled down. But my doubling down looked like doing research, asking questions, and finding things out for myself. And I never really looked back.
What a wild, independent thing to do. Go find things out for yourself. Do you have any experience with organized religion? And do you have any people in your life that are part of it? Are you a part of any organized church or anything along those lines?
Organized. Well, I did grow up in a Catholic church per se. I was also a very hyperactive, uncontrollable kid. So that didn't last very long as far as forcing me to go to that thing every Sunday. Mm-hmm. But I do consider myself a Christian. I have been to larger churches, but
you got any friends that are really kind of zealous Christians or evangelicals that are out preaching on a regular basis? Have you ever experienced that kind of thing in your circle?
I could say one, yeah.
Tell me how you see the way that people started turning in 2016, and it was not for Trump, although I think that actually became a thing later on. There became this sort of religious fervor to it, or whatever it was, sort of energy. But man, the opposition to Trump seemed almost like he was an apostate. He was someone that was violating these sacred tenets. And your experience of what you were saying, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, because whatever it was, it offended their religious sensibilities. It wasn't that's not the way people dealt with politics up until then.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a very good observation. That is the way it felt. Now it seems like the new thing is to call all the people that support Trump a cult. But I mean, my experience is these people in the beginning, they just cut family members off. They totally just, to this day, I know people that still will not talk to their family members because their family member voted for Trump. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And it does seem pretty, when you juxtapose it to like serious, religious beliefs, that it's a reaction to religion. But I always say communism is a religion. So
I don't think you're wrong. Yeah. Like a secular religion, like kind of a godless religion, if you will. Right. But that was the same instinct. And, we were in different parts of the country. I wondered how much of this the sort of cult behavior that they pin on Trump people, I think a lot of that was reaction. And it was like, I need to figure out who's on my team, who's not going to come at me and cancel me and take my job, and who I can just talk to about the thing that I think is not a big deal. Yeah. And so you saw people that got canceled over it, like you said, family members and stuff like that, that just said, you're out, you've been PNG'd, you're voted off the island or whatever it is, and you're out of the friend group, and we kicked you out of the group chat. And so the alternative is like, who's my group chat now? Who's my people?
Yeah, the Facebook thing was so unreal during that time. Like, I remember there was a guy, he's another one of these burner friends of mine, you know, far left liberal, and he's making these outrageous claims on there about, you know, Trump being a pedophile and Nazi and just the typical crap. And then I finally say to him, like, Kevin, what can you do to substantiate your points here? And he of course calls me a white supremacist and this, that, and a third. And I say, okay, well, you know, why don't you try explaining yourself? And then he threatens my life. And I said, okay, Kevin, I mean, I know you, dude. The only way you could possibly kill me is if you read me a page out of your gay vegan poetry book. Boom, instant 30-day ban for me. Now, as I'm looking, I could still see on
this is all going on Facebook.
Yeah, I have a 30-day ban for saying gay vegan poetry book. Now he's still on there talking all these, and I'm scrolling down.
Now, if you were selling a gay vegan poetry book, it would be promoted, I imagine.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
So that's funny.
Actually, now you got the wheels turning.
There's some money in gay vegan poetry. I'm confident of it.
Well, you remember,
in the right circumstances.
You know, speaking of gay vegans, remember like Mike Fanone, there was a time where neck tattoos actually meant you were a badass, and now they literally mean I'm about to read you a page out of my gay vegan poetry book.
Is that I don't know that. I don't know enough about neck tats, except when I see them, I generally think this person might have a felony record. That's been my sort of instinct.
In the 80s, 90s, and maybe early 2000s. That's
like a dude I got to be watching. Like, that guy's going to be on my radar until he gets out of my screen.
Now it means my boyfriend works for the Capitol Police Office. You know, so it's
what kind of trouble are we going to get in with that?
We've changed what the meaning of tattooing is. But I scroll down on this guy's page after I just get banned for this, and he's making direct threats at the president's life. I mean, no.
This is after the election.
Yes, this is after the election. So he's sent, and so I'm banned for saying this, and he's allowed to remain on Facebook making threats and call Nazi this and just the most hateful speech possible. But that's okay. And that's,
what did you take from that? What kind of rules did you interpret after seeing that?
Well, at first I heard the rights claims that there was censorship going on, and I almost let it go through one ear and out the other without taking it too serious. But then when you experience it, you're forced to look at it. So it just confirmed what these people have been saying. And then I had a Parler account because I had to.
And that was where you interacted with people online at that point?
Yeah, it's where I met some of the Proud Boys, and you know, the whole thing started because I wasn't allowed to say how I felt on social media without getting banned. So Parler was the only thing that would allow me to do that.
Interesting. What sort of work were you doing? We kind of left from the dialing for dollars or dialing for votes. What kind of work were you doing over the time between then and, let's say, Trump getting in, and just so people get a sense of what you did background?
Throughout my 20s and into my 30s, I was a promoter, and I also did private security work. Around late 20s, I got into aircraft mechanics, smaller prop planes. And before my endeavor with the FBI on January 6th, I was working on graduating to Lear jets and private jets, aircraft maintenance repairs and stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay. And then so you had to have like FAA certifications to work on these things, and
I was under an FAA certification for the Lear jets, working towards that before, but I was directly under an FAA inspector for sure.
Fair enough. So okay, so you worked with your hands. The security thing that came from being a fighter and being younger and knowing what tough guys needed to do. Basically,
it started off as a club bouncer in Miami, and then I met a very wealthy individual that wanted to hand select their security. So they sent me to a 6-month school, which is pretty much unnecessary in all aspects, but it was fun.
Okay, so you kind of walked us right up to the social media experience. Let me ask you this too. How old are you? We got to be in the same age bracket.
41.
You're 41. So we're a couple years, like 2 years apart. How critical was social media to you, let's say in your 30s, when it came to interacting with the world around you, receiving news, how central to it was that when you thought about things that you went like, oh yeah, and this is what's going on Facebook or social media or Parler, how critical?
It wasn't that. I wasn't one of those like social media fanatics. I think I was a little late to the game with Facebook. I remember having a MySpace page and that went away. And then I really didn't get back on social media.
Okay. So you also missed Tom, who was all of our friends.
Yeah. Well, I think he was like my only friend on, but no, I wasn't crazy about it. It never was a source of media for me until right after the Occupy Wall Street thing happened. I didn't care.
What year was Occupy Wall Street?
I want to say 2011.
Okay. I was thinking it was a little bit later than that. So
it could have been.
Did you go to events or you were just sort of tracking the movement online?
I did. I went to one event in Miami, and that's when I really got to see it for what it was. And it was just a bunch of ratchet, mindless drone retards talking about things that they had no clue what they were talking about. And we'll just start with the economy. They had no idea what they were talking about. It's just tax the rich. Okay. And then what? I don't know. Let's just get mad at each other. It was so stupid. I wanted no part of it.
What did it smell like though?
Hippie, sage, and wet nog champa.
When you say hippie, I just think patchouli. Is that
no? You got to think more of like body odor and like McDonald's fries and a Honda Civic. Like that old summer fast food smell that you can't get out of a car.
Now, if you were doing a lot of Burning Man stuff, that probably wasn't like particularly offensive to you. That wasn't the problem.
It's kind of like when you smoke cigarettes. You don't really notice the smell. It's everywhere. And then you quit smoking cigarettes and then you just can't stand the smell. I would compare it to the same scenario.
I like that. That's a good way I think people can relate to that. Or at least they remember the smoking and the non-smoking sections when they were a kid.
The point of the matter is hippies cause cancer.
Okay. That may be the name of this episode. I think that's that's appropriately salacious.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we'll just get it right there. Okay, so hippies cause cancer. Let's press on with the political. So you had this obviously political swing. Are you still independent? Are you registered with any party at this point?
I'm registered Republican because Florida has a closed primary, and I'm going to be very, very active in this primary.
Okay, fair enough. Were you, let's say, in the last 10 years, always registered that way?
No. I did the same thing I registered a Democrat. I would say it was probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little sooner, for the same reasons, because I was supporting a candidate that was running for judge and the sheriff. And I wanted to vote, I believe it was, and they were Democrat, and I was planning on voting for them. Then I went to independent. I switched to conservative on my Republican because I want to be able to vote in the primary this time.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
All right. So talk to me about Trump gets into office. You see some Facebook status. You lost a gay vegan poet friend.
I'm still upset about this.
I can see that's reasonable. Give me kind of the rundown. What did you think of the first term in Trump? And obviously it led you to being at January 6th. So how do you go from a guy that, transitions from being an Obama voter, jumps in, says Trump's different, to finding yourself in federal prison because of what happened in 2020?
Well, it would start the day that I believe a man, a felon that has a history of beating his wife, tried to pass off a counterfeit piece of money and then claimed he couldn't breathe as he fought police, and we watched our cities burn to the ground. And it sounds like you're describing St. George of fentanyl. Yes, fentanyl, okay. Floyd riots, yes. And I just watched it play out, and I had a police scanner, and I'm watching the news, and I'm seeing cities burn down and police vehicles be attacked and federal buildings be burned, and they're saying this is a mostly peaceful protest. I'm just dumbfounded by what I'm seeing. And then I'm watching the news, and you see in Charlottesville play out, and then you hear about this group called the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and the way they're framing the narrative around these people, it just clearly is not true. And I became angry seeing the American flag constantly burn. Nobody doing anything about it. And CNN and MSNBC and ABC working together to frame a narrative that I know is not true. And the two groups of guys that were doing anything about it, albeit retardedly, were the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. And I watched our cities burn, and I felt that people needed to do more about it. And then I realized, well, you know, you're talking about doing more about it from the comfort of your air conditioning house, man. What are you doing? So I started to go out to these events, and I started to look from the sideline, just watch and see the behavior of these people and what they were claiming. I started looking at police statistics and looking at police brutality, statistics, and it just, none of it add up. It was all bullshit. And to see the media, and that's when it just hit me that, okay, they want me to believe that Donald Trump and his supporters who've only been, in power for a few years now, are the problem of all of America's issues that have been gone back 100 years, when half of these people have been in office for 50. And I'm going to blame Donald Trump, and this is all his fault. This is happening. Mm-hmm. So it solidified the fact for me that there is forces working against this guy. And when all these people like Pelosi are telling me this is the bad person, he can't be all that bad. And, I became angry. I became bitter at what I was seeing through this BLM and Antifa crap. And at first I just wanted to be angry and fight. But I think, January 6th would bring it to a different place for me. When
you were seeing the George Floyd riots going across the country, we saw big ones in Portland, we saw Seattle, Minneapolis, et cetera. Chicago had some good ones. It seemed like there was some in, the Midwest. Was it prominent in Miami? Was there violence in Miami? Were there demonstrations or anything along those lines?
We had a little wild one in Fort Lauderdale, but it is rather squashed down here pretty fast because Miami PD don't play that shit. And they have district attorneys, mayors, and that are going to support them, and they're not going to allow that. Most of the Miami PD down here are hardcore anti-communist Cubans. So good luck with that. But yes, little pockets, but nothing like we saw in Chicago or anything like that. Nothing like that.
Were there verbal, marches or demonstrations, anything like that?
Yeah, I went.
Did you attend any?
I did. I attended one in Fort Lauderdale. We got there a little late. My goal was to go there and observe and just film. But we got there a little late. They had already marched through, and in their wake was just on Los Olas Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale was just smashed windows and graffiti and the ACAB stuff. And I was hoping to be able to capture some of that, but no, I didn't get to. But just seeing that, it pissed me off.
It's really cowardly, especially when you've seen it. You just know, because they're fighting things that people aren't there to defend their businesses or something. It has nothing to do with them. You mentioned that you were watching the Proud Boys from the outside. You're studying, statistics. You're looking into kind of is this even a justifiable in any way, shape, or form kind of scenario? Did you end up connecting with the Proud Boys prior to, I guess, where you're at right now?
I tried before January 6th. I made a few attempts. They had a website up at the time to, put your information out. Someone will get back to you kind of thing. And that never happened. I did attempt a few times, but I met a couple people within the fraternity through flag waving events, but never had any luck making direct contact. I wanted to join for that reason. I was trying, but before January 6th, that was not the case.
What was your experience of, especially in your business you were doing there, of COVID and 2020, in addition to the social unrest that was going on? There was obviously there was a strange, political, not just political, what was it, economic scenarios, a lot of businesses shut down, all that.
Yeah, well, you asked me about that. I forgot to, after the airplane stuff, I had saved up a little bit of money and I opened up my own company and I started my own business probably 6 months before the COVID pandemic occurred. And my company, I was planning very lavish and extravagant honeymoon and dates for very wealthy individuals throughout Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And then COVID hit. So I took my only $65,000, bought my mom a little cheap car, put the rest of it into that to that company. And of course, with lockdowns looming, most of my customers were going to be from out of the country or out of the state. Travel almost ceased to exist. And that was the worst time to throw a honeymoon, to plan a honeymoon company. So COVID shut down my company. I had nothing, I threw all my money into this. It was all gone. And it was just, now the only thing I had to do was watch our cities and country burn on the TV.
How did you get by during that time when everything got shut down?
Well, I had a little money saved up. My lease was up right when the lockdowns happened. So I moved in with my elderly mother to help her out because we didn't know what was going on. And, so I had my basic necessities, but it was constantly like, when this is over, what do we do? What do I do? I had no idea. So, I mean,
yeah. Did you have any solutions that you'd come up with, or was it more questioning? I mean, I think a lot of people had the same questions you did. I'm curious if you had solutions.
Yeah, all I knew what to do was go back into the aircraft industry, and so I was able to maintain a job through a friend, a pretty decent job back in airplane mechanics. So that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, but for now it worked. It paid the bills, and I had an opportunity to pursue a license in the field. So that's all I had to lean on.
What did you see for the ballot in November? We go into 2020. It's Trump v. Biden. What did it look like in Miami, and what did it look like from your point of view at that time? What was being offered, I guess?
Well, what do you mean, like as far as why I was Trump versus Biden, or?
I guess, what do you remember about them pitching? Like why Biden was a better solution? What did anybody make a cogent point in your circle? Did you have, did you have any belief that there was a possibility of that guy being elected? What do you remember about that election as you saw it coming up? Because Hillary versus Trump was very different.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody assumed Trump was going to get devastated. Mm-hmm. Right? He was the underdog. I mean, I remember laughing my butt off. I actually laughed so hard I cried on November 8th of 2016. I was at the FBI Academy, and I was literally with tears in my eyes. I was cracking up so hard because they were, CNN was crying.
Yeah,
it was different in November of 2020. I mean, there was all the weird things that had happened for the whole year. There was, COVID was still ongoing or whatever it was. There was a lot of scared people. There were some of us that were just really irritated with it. So what do you recall of that mood at the time? Because all that fed into some energy that went into, Washington, D.C. in January.
Yeah. And I know all of everyone's different grievances about that. And I find a lot of them, most of them valid. I mean, I did not think Biden had a chance, that my humble opinion. So, but there's people with the Arizona election, there's people with the Pennsylvania election, there's people that, the censorship on social media was what fueled everything. For me personally, outside of wanting to go to DC just to prevent Antifa from doing anything to Trump supporters, my grievance with the 2020 election was the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Okay.
This censorship. That is what pissed me off the most, seeing that there. And leading up to that, as I was at my mother's house for COVID, I received 3 never requested Democrat mail-in ballots to my house with my name on it. And then this was after I read the stories in the concerns of this happening. This happened to me. And so I knew right off the bat something was not right. But for me showing up to DC, it was simply the Hunter Biden laptop story.
What do you remember about the Hunter Biden laptop story? What got you incensed about it?
On the debate stage, the whole 51 or whatever intel agents that signed off of it, the whole Russia hoax, blaming it on that, the narrative around it, the blatant censorship of New York Post on Twitter and Facebook. And then when I tried to post the story, I get another 30-day ban.
Interesting. So you were attempting to spread the word, and like so many other people, you got the same kind of smackdown from, what platform was that on? That was
on Facebook. And that was who I was actually paying for ads to try to finish out my company to recoup some money, and paying them for this. And they shut my account down. So I was paying them for a service they weren't even giving me.
That's always interesting, isn't it? Yeah. If you get censorship somewhere where it's a platform that is accepting your ad dollars, how fun to find out how little they care about what you have to say.
No.
All right. So you're, I think, righteously frustrated. How many people do you think around you in your circle, were they politically aware, and did they know about this Hunter Biden laptop scenario?
Most, my friends are pretty divided on the political spectrum. So, on one half, I have to listen to I'm a Nazi and Trump's all wrong, and then the ones that my conservative friends, yeah, they were concerned. I don't think that nobody was as in tuned as I was to the atmosphere around it, but yeah, I mean, people were seeing it played out.
Do you have a sense of how many of your people in your friend group voted one way or versus the other?
I would think a pretty good sense, yeah.
And was that, I had people tell me that they didn't know anybody that voted for Biden, and which means they probably didn't know very many people. That's also a possibility. Yeah. Miami's kind of a different animal, and yeah. Especially if you were running with a crew and half them or some of them were involved in going to Burning Man. I have to imagine you got a more diverse group of people.
Yeah, all those people, I don't even. Yeah, whatever. They're gone. They'll probably champion for Biden, but I doubt they'll be able to put the bong down long enough to actually get off the couch and go vote that day. So their opinion means nothing to me. But the people that I surround myself on a media basis, yeah, they all voted for Trump. I mean, my mom has been a staunch Trump supporter since day one of him announcing his campaign.
Got it.
My sister, liberal, far left liberal, tranny rights are the most important thing in the world, liberal, voted for Trump. So
what was that about?
Well, it was she did her own research. I had nothing to do with it because I can't even talk politics to the kids. She did her own research, surprisingly, and questioned her friends, had her friends clap back on her like I've experienced, and I think we all experienced, and drew her own conclusions.
Wacky.
So, yeah.
If trans rights are the biggest thing and you thought that was your guy.
Super important.
Is it really to her?
Yeah, well, it was. She's on her own and her, grace of God, whatever. She's put it aside and realized it's not that important anymore. But yeah, it used to be.
Digging down on that, what age was she in 2020? Where does that put her now for?
Okay, so she would have been about 30 years old. Yeah.
And she's 35, 36 now?
Yeah.
There's a transition that can happen there.
Yeah. Well, like they say, if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative in your 40s, you have no brain.
That's what they say.
She's got an early start.
All right. Good on her. All right. Let's talk about post-election.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think the results were legit?
No, I did not.
Give me some of the things that convinced you otherwise.
Well, the Pennsylvania changing the legislation against their own state's constitution, that right there, that didn't pass the smell test in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Again, I'll reiterate probably 1,000 times the Hunter Biden laptop story, the constant censorship, and then to me, I didn't really even care about the evidence, but when we have a sitting president that is kicked off of social media and censored, an active president, that is a greater threat to any type of future in our Constitution, for me personally, than anything else, than anything Al Qaeda or Russia or China will ever be. So you don't censor the truth. People don't censor the truth. They don't censor lies. They censor the truth, is what I meant to say. If people are lying, that they argue with that. But what I watched, the censorship of Donald Trump and how they would kick him off of social media completely, that was all the red flags that I really needed, that something was deeper than just election fraud in and of itself.
And that was a really coordinated effort, as I recall. I didn't use social media at the time, but I remember kind of the scandal was like all at once, all the platforms at once, right? Within 24 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So had you decided that you were going to go to, were you in DC other than January 6th? Were you there in December or any of the things that went on as it was escalating?
Nope.
Okay.
Just January 6th.
And were you paying attention to what was going on up there at that time, though, and keeping your finger on it?
The only thing I knew previously was in December. I did follow the story of the Proud Boys clashing with Antifa, and I know there's some fog around the details, so I'm not going to get into the details. But the bottom line is, members of the Proud Boys were stabbed, and so. For me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go defend the Proud Boys when I go up to January 6th. It was that I'm going to defend people from Antifa. That's why that was my goal. I can understand where people say that's a pretty stupid thing to do. That's fine. We can have that conversation, but that is my intention. But no, I only watched it on the news and, on social media and live streamers and stuff.
Yep. And what was your preparation to go up there? What did that look like? How did you decide? Did you go with anybody?
Well, I went with my fiance, but she did not. She went with me to drive. She stayed in Virginia. She had no intention or interest of going to the Capitol. She wasn't even really that political. That she is more so now, but at that time she wasn't even really political. She went and took advantage of going to DC to go see a friend who lives up there that she hasn't seen since she was a little girl. So that's who I went with. I watched on Parler some of the guys, Enrique, Joe Biggs, and they were discussing plans or giving people, advice if they were going up there. First, I noticed between the two of them, they were encouraging people not to go. But if you were going to go, do this. And one thing they said was, don't ever wear a tactical vest with a plate carrier. It is illegal in DC. Do not do it, and put a cutting board in it. In the plate carrier. They were concerned because some of their guys, as we just previously discussed, were cut and slashed the month before. So that's what I did. I put a cutting board inside my plate carrier. I brought pepper spray. And other than that, I didn't go up there. Yes, I did go up there in hopes that Antifa would do something stupid, and I had the justifiable on paper look of defending. So were my intentions not to go there to be, was I innocent? No, of course not. I was hoping for a fight with Antifa. And I did, if I went up there and met the Proud Boys, I was going to ask to join, whatever that looked like. I had no idea and see what happened, but it was something that I personally wanted to do. Little did I know what was going to happen that day.
Little did anybody know.
Yeah.
Unless you believe the government's position that it was all seditious conspiracy. You pitched talking to me about this with a pretty unique angle, and it's different than a lot of people that I've spoken to. I've spoken to a number of people about J6. Do you want to try to repeat that, or if you can, approximate
Sure.
our first kind of little interaction on this, where you told me your J6 story in a thumbnail?
Right. Well, I went there for the reasons I told you. That was it. I mean, I didn't go there for any other reasons. I wasn't going there to stop the election. I wasn't going there to battle with police. I got to the West Side Senate staircase. I would say 15, 20 minutes approximately. Don't quote me. It's all on record. You could look it up about after the initial breach was done. What I witnessed was a group of men and women singing the national anthem. They had their hands up trying to tell Capitol Police that they were there to be peaceful. And there was some skirmishes, and argument broke out. And while we were singing the national anthem, two silhouettes appeared at the top of the staircase and began to fire rubber munition rounds into the crowd. There was an individual by the name of, I didn't know his name at the time, I found out later, Joshua Black, who was shot through the face with a rubber munition round. There was an older woman who saw that scene. She tried to get away, and she was pushed by an officer. It was at that point that I let my anger get the best of me, and I made a mistake that I do. The one thing I do regret about January 6th was the thing that I am responsible for. I pepper sprayed a Capitol police officer out of anger and frustration at the situation. I'm not justifying my actions.
Yep.
I wish I could take them back. That one thing, I wish I can take it back. I was charged with 2 assaults. The second one never occurred. I am 100% guilty of the first. And what makes it worse, Kyle, is the officer that I am responsible for pepper spraying, it was actually not a bad guy. A, he didn't do anything wrong that I saw. And B, when he came to my trial, he didn't try to Mike Fanone me. He didn't try to do oh my God, my life is ruined. It was what it was. It is what it is. He wasn't trying to get me sent to prison for life. So I feel extra bad about that situation, because I think if there was one Capitol police officer that didn't deserve it, it was probably him. And
so the officer that you ended up pepper spraying, he just played it straight. He said, here's where I was. This is what happened. What did his testimony look like when you were sitting there?
It was basically like, skirmishes had happened. Somebody had broke the line. I didn't see what it was. I don't know for sure what it was. I washed it out I went back to work until 1 a.m. and never went to the hospital. There was no need. The end.
Really straightforward, paragraph long kind of report. Just gave that to him. No emotion attached to it. No trauma.
No. If anything, he was kind of, I got the sense that he felt like this whole thing was a charade and didn't really want to be a part of it.
Interesting. Did your counsel do any cross with him?
A little bit, but there was really nothing to cross because when I went to trial, I was never arguing that I was innocent. I was only arguing that what they charged me with was not what had happened. And I'm guilty of assault, not one step under attempted murder, which is essentially what they tried to charge me with. Let's
talk about the charging. Let's talk about let's talk about, you said you obviously you own the pepper spray piece. Chaos. Did you intentionally aim at the person that was there? It just happened to be that cop when you aimed, or were you spraying in an area? Like, what did that look like as far as deploying it?
I met somebody throughout that day that was at that front line. And when I looked over, they were in a struggle with the officers. And I think he was one of them. And I aimed directly at him.
Got it. Okay. What happened directly after that?
That was when the line collapsed and people began to run up the stairs. At that point.
And where were you? What was your actions in that?
People were going up the stairs. That was never really my intention. So I just went over to the side because I was going to get trampled if I didn't get out of the way. It was either go up or get out of the way. So I got out of the way.
Okay. Got it. Did you ever end up going inside the Capitol at all?
Not inside. I did at some point walk up to the top of the stairs. And what I saw is just, I didn't want to be a part of that. So I got out of there.
Tell people who weren't there what it was from wherever you were standing. What could you see and why did you not want to be a part of it?
Well, I seen a lot of clashes with the police. There were some people that were very angry. I seen people walking by and just being pepper sprayed for no reason. And then I seen people going back at the police officers it would appear to be for no reason. I wasn't there I didn't even know the certification of the election was going on. I had no idea. You didn't
know what the purpose of the day was?
I had no idea why we were at the Capitol there. Like I said, I really was hoping Antifa would come out and try to punch some old lady so I could beat him up. As stupid as that may sound to some people, I understand. That was it for me. And I seen some windows breaking, and I did see a lot of people trying to calm people down from doing that. And then I saw a situation play out where an individual I personally do not think they were being nefarious. I think they were just being stupid. I don't think they were Antifa, but they were saying, like, let's go fuck up that cop car that's out there, right? Like there was a police vehicle that was parked out front on the east side or the other side. And immediately I seen Trump supporters, tell this person, hey, no, absolutely not. We are not here for that. That is not who we are. And I watched that play out. But then to see that energy, that's when I realized, you know what? I don't want to be anywhere near this shit. And I went downstairs and I never went back up.
Okay. So it sounds like you were not arrested on that day. Am I correct in guessing that?
No.
All right. What was your egress? What did that look like? How'd you get out of there?
I called. The alarms came over the phone that Mayor Bowser had implemented a curfew, and being the domestic terrorist that I am, I decided to respect the curfew and called an Uber.
Smart. Yeah, I think I actually got those messages because I was in DC at the time, or I was at least nearby. I think we all got them on the phones. So you took an Uber and escaped out, and then. What is it? Beat feet back to Florida with the fiance, or did you stick around for a while?
Well, I went and had dinner with a cousin the next day, but that's when it all hit me. I'm looking at the news, and I'm in my hotel room. I'm back in, I believe, Arlington, and I'm seeing the news play out. And they're like, white nationalists attacked the Capitol. White nationalists tried to overthrow the government. I'm like, wait, who's the white Nash? Oh shit, they're saying that's me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. How bad of a pit in your stomach and your sinking feeling did you have, let's say, the day afterwards?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Because I was upset with myself for what I had done. I knew that was not indicative of who I am. I will still say that Capitol Police were the aggressor. That does not excuse my behavior. Okay. But you watch what we've seen in 2020. We've seen the whole thing play out, and you almost get the sense we're like, it's not a big deal. They didn't do anything to them. They're not going to do anything to us.
Oops.
That was the dumbest thought I've ever had. So I would say a couple days later is when it hit me. I'm going to prison.
You had that thought within a few days of January 6th?
Yeah, for sure.
And
that was going to happen.
Yeah, walk me through how that story ended up coming about, because obviously you were right.
It started with I had that thought because I'm seeing the narrative play out, and I'm seeing that the FBI had started investigating people, and this was just within a couple days. So fast forward like about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm watching C-SPAN because I'm cool like that, and I'm seeing the impeachment of Donald Trump play out, and a congresswoman, I want to say it was Cori Bush, maybe it was her, it was a female, and she was up there, giving her spiel about white nationalists, this, that, and the third, and she's playing a video of January 6th. Long story short, she pauses it right on my unmasked face.
Oh, no.
And so I got up off the couch. I got my first pack of cigarettes in over 15 years and hired an attorney and retained an attorney.
That's probably a pretty sane thing to do. That's a wild moment for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, where does it go from there?
Well, it takes I spend a year. My relationship. I'm a very lucky man. I have a solid woman, but as you can imagine, she doesn't know the seriousness behind it. I've mentioned that I'm probably going to prison. Or like, whatever. No one's, I'm like, I'm probably gonna get 15 years in prison. Like, shut up, whatever. So as this goes forward, we're seeing that there's doors being kicked in, there's people being arrested, and like, all right, it's only a matter of time. For a whole year, almost a whole year, I slept in our guest room, because if the FBI came in, guns ablazing, I could say, here I am, please come to this room, shoot me, please don't shoot my girl. And honestly, I was just as equally concerned about my 8-pound Chihuahua Martini. I don't want her to be shot either by the FBI. So I'm sleeping in the...
That's the most damning thing you've said so far.
Yeah, there's going to be more. First of all, that dog is I get hit on every single time I walk that dog. And they seem like really nice dudes too, but I don't swing that way. So, they can just
Thank you for making the joke for me. Look, if you carry around an animal that is prey, you might indicate to other people that you are also prey. So
fair enough.
Yeah, fair. I've got a couple gals that are in my little orbit, and I'm just like, you got to get a dog that looks like it can kill somebody.
Yeah.
Like, men will come and try to do bad things to you if you walk around with a Shih Tzu or a Chihuahua or some other little yappy Yorkie prey dog.
Yeah. Fortunately, the FBI had come to my house in this neighborhood a few times, and now I'm just mysteriously back. So I have this ominous presence around me. None of my neighbors talk to me, so I have nothing to worry about.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So you got an 8-pound Chihuahua, which we're going to move on from. You're sleeping in the guest room, which is actually not a dumb thing. I can understand that sentiment as well. And how does it finally come to a head?
I'm at work one day, and I get my fiance gets a knock at the door from the FBI, and they've got a picture of me. And she, being the gangster that she is, she's the sweetest woman in the world. She tells the FBI to pound sand. I'm not talking to you. We had been kind of preparing for this. Like I said, I've retained a lawyer for a whole year now. So she goes, the FBI hands her a business card. She immediately leaves the house, goes to my attorney, brings him the business card. Then she comes to my job to inform me that the day we all knew would arrive has finally come. My attorney reaches out to the FBI agent. The FBI agent communicates that he's 30 to 40 days from needing to sit down to talk to me. My attorney informs him I will turn myself in when that time. Just let him know we're not going anywhere. Approximately 2 weeks later, I get a call at my job, which never happens. I never get a call at my job. And the parts manager comes up and says, hey, Barry, there's a call on line 1 from you from a person, so-and-so name. They say that they're a close family friend of yours. I'm like, I don't know anybody that by that name. So I go to line 1. Nobody's there. Now, it's a little weird because I don't get calls. And being somebody that goes to flag waving events and that's constantly getting up in the left's face, you know you're going to get doxxed. It's inevitable. We prepare for it. So I think my time has come. I'm getting doxxed. Well, I have a service from an app called Truth Finder. I look up the number that calls. It's in the caller ID. It comes back to the so-and-so person that they said was a close family friend. And so that's a little odd. So I get a vehicle VIN number and an address from Truth Finder connected to this phone number, and I text it to the person. And I call them from like an app on the phone that disguises your number. And I say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, pretty much you know who I am. I know who you are. Text them their address and tell them, don't with me, thinking it's like Antifa doxing me.
Yeah.
It was the FBI agent investigating my case.
Strong.
Who's now calling my attorney and saying that I threatened an FBI agent to try to get him to stop investigating my case. And that needing to sit down with me in 30 to 45 days turned into about 2 days later, multiple M16s and a bunch of guys. There was a dude in the tree. I don't know why he was LARPing in the tree, but I could see him, so he wasn't really hiding. And red dots and green dots all over my chest. And they asked me to pull my shirt up. I was I live in the free state of Florida. I carry a weapon on me everywhere I go.
Yep.
And that was the moment where I'm like, hey, I'm probably going to get shot dead right now because I'm lifting up my shirt and there's my firearm, which I'm sure they knew I had on me. Mm-hmm. And, fortunately, from that moment on, after the cuffs went on, things calmed down.
What a wild experience. What time was that in the morning? At 0600?
5:30 in the morning.
Yep. So that happened and you think it was predicated on the fact that you had gone searching for your close family friend who you believed to be Antifa.
Yeah.
Did that get straightened out later on in an interview?
No. They would use that to deny my bond twice, that I threatened an FBI agent. The judge was very concerned about that because, I mean, rightfully so. It's some serious shit had it been true. And so they denied my bond twice. They used that to hold me in. And during my trial, and my lawyer got the FBI agent to admit that he never identified himself as a law enforcement officer, did not recall, which is a legal answer, that of what he did identify himself. We had a letter statement. We had a letter and a statement from my parts manager who took the call that said, hey, he did say he was a close family friend of Barry Ramey. But then they changed it to a sentencing enhancement, a 3-point enhancement that can potentially carry, I believe, up to 4 extra additional years in prison. On the 11th hour of my sentencing, the prosecution hands over a text message to my attorney through Telegram, where I immediately after getting this phone call, I text a group of friends that say, hey, I think Antifa's doxing me at my job. This is going to get interesting. So they knew this, they had this, and then they dropped the sentencing enhancement in the 11th hour before my sentencing.
That's gross. Also, I don't understand. Was there ever an explanation why he decided to identify himself as other than an FBI agent?
No, never.
I mean, if they thought that was something that was going to help you in your job, there'd be some sort of justification. Like, we don't want to say the FBI is calling for you. But I'm assuming they had your phone number. You had a cell phone or no?
I have my cell phone. They already talked to my lawyer. They knew where I lived. They knew where I worked.
So they knew you had counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about that bothers me because we've got a fair amount of law enforcement and retired folks that listen to this program. But once somebody has got counsel, you just go to counsel. They've already made an agreement. They're not going to run. They're happy to turn themselves in. Like, nobody wants to go and chase people and kick down doors. Did you have any of that information?
House and going to the same job for over a year now.
Yeah. Did you have any sense that was strange or, not normal protocol?
Yeah, I did. It didn't seem because they talked to my lawyer. My lawyer told him I was willing to turn myself in. And for me, I was dying to turn myself in, Kyle. I just wanted to get this over with.
Sure.
I was going to turn myself in on my own fruition, but my lawyer said, no, do not do that until they indict you. And that was his recommendation. So I'm paying this guy for his recommendations. I followed it.
Yep.
I was more than willing to turn myself in.
What were the eventual charges they hit you with?
Originally, it was two 111Bs, which is aggravated battery with a deadly and dangerous weapon, and then they added causing serious bodily injury and harm to federal officers. Combined total 40 years in prison. There was picketing, rioting, disorderly conduct with violence and stuff like that, which I wasn't really arguing. The main two that I did a bench trial, fortunately, was successful. The first one to be successful, that pepper spray is not a deadly and dangerous weapon. Both of these officers, even though I never touched the second officer, both of them testified they never went to the hospital. So how can bodily injury occur? And that was the only argument I had. I mean, that's, fortunately, my lawyer did a phenomenal job at articulating that.
So what did you end up getting convicted of?
111A, which is simple assault, which I was never arguing. And they did give me the second assault. I did try to appeal that and lost, but whatever. And the other charges, I don't even know what they really were. I wasn't arguing with them. I didn't even care. They basically they basically said one of these charges apply to me because my actions that day stopped interstate commerce because a Safeway truck from Philadelphia was not able to enter DC and drop off goods because I did January 6th. So I got stuck with that one.
Yeah, that checks. That sounds like the way
and the
that's how
FBI
justice gets
agent
done.
Confirmed that happened, even though he's not a logistics manager for the company. So yeah,
they brought in an FBI agent to testify about that particular
the one that I threatened. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, so is the guy, and that was somebody down in Miami?
It is, yes. Yeah.
An expert
out of the Miramar office.
Got it. Mm-hmm. One of the RAs. Great. So what was your sentencing like? What, did you have a statement that you were giving, and what did that sound like?
It was at this point, because we had argued that they kept saying that, I was a Proud Boy that day. I was a Proud Boy that day. And I wasn't. I technically wasn't a Proud Boy that day. I did join a few weeks later, and January 6th had nothing to do with it. But good luck telling the American people and the prosecution this, right? I mean, sure. All they would have heard is that was my initiation. Nothing could have been further than the truth. None of those guys even knew who I was.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make a point to say that Donald Trump or the Proud Boys did not make me do anything. I did what I did. It was my fault. I did it, and I'm responsible for that. I was sincere. I was as sincere as I possibly could have been. The judge, of course, said I was not, and said I was only sorry that I got caught, which there was truth to that as well. But that was what I said on my sentencing, and the judge gave me 60 months in federal prison. As my mom became teary-eyed, I was relieved. I mean, I was accepting my sentence. I thought they were arguing for 9.5 years. They wanted me to sign a plea for 25 years. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
They dangled 25 years out in front of you and said, this is our offer.
Yeah. They first it was 40 years. And then they can, we'll make you an offer for 25 years. And I was, yeah, okay. No, I'm going to trial. And they're like, well, if you lose, we're going to go for 40 years. I'm like, good. Okay, good. Let's go. Yeah. Rest is history.
Man, that's really wild. For pepper spray.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I'm not justifying my actions. I'm never going to do that. In fact, the only reason that the main reason I'm honest about it, other than that's what happened, is that if people want to talk about all this violence that occurred that day that actually didn't occur, and then they could point to me and say, well, Barry Ramey, that's one. Okay, great. I'm one. That means you have to identify and justify the fact that 1,500 other people that did nothing wrong that day, some of them got worse sentences than I did because they couldn't afford a lawyer or the prosecution manipulated their case, and they did nothing violent. So if I'm the bad guy and you can point at me and say there he is, then what does it make the rest of these men and women that did nothing?
I guess that's what I found interesting about the pitch that you made and telling your story, which is that there are a couple of people that did violence, and in a just world, people who do violence against cops, they get some sort of punishment, and the only problem is that what you did would have normally ended up in the DC Superior Court. Did your attorney talk to you about that at all? That the fact they were charging it in the district court was crazy?
No, my attorney was very clear that she was pretty left leaning, and I can honestly say I believe that after this experience, because I do believe she believes in the Constitution. Actually, I know she does because she defended me like she did. I think she voted for Trump. She'll never admit it, but I think she voted for Trump.
You think that your trial and the experience of defending you radicalized her in some ways? Radicalized her away from her old beliefs?
Because I wasn't the only J6 case. She was involved with multiple of them, and she expressed to me many times that she's never seen this much shady, ominous involvement from the Department of Justice in anything like this, and it made her question the constitutionality behind it, and she continued to question it.
You obviously made it out. You want to talk about what your time was there, anything that was notable or interesting that people should understand about serving the time that you did?
Well, yeah, I think that the conversation we really need to have now is the Patriot Act and what it actually is, and how it is the most unconstitutional piece of legislation that has ever been passed, and it's weaponized against the American people. And the microcosm of that is what we experienced, the J6ers, while in prison. The Department of Justice, Merrick Garland's office, labeled us while we served our time with a flip of a switch. Just one little button was able to label all of us as domestic terrorists. We were classified by the Bureau of Prisons and Department of Justice as domestic terrorists while we served our time. Our families were monitored by the counterterrorism unit of the Bureau of Prisons. My fiance's social media was. I was held hostage more or less, because if I didn't tell her to delete certain posts that were pro-Trump and anti-Biden, they were going to ship me to a maximum security prison and cut off all communications with her. They monitored her. The FBI was monitoring her, my family, just because they were able to deem all of us January 6ers as domestic terrorists.
But yeah, will you explain to people, if you can, what substantiates that claim that you're making right there? And in other words, what either conversations or evidence that you had that indicated that was the case?
Well, it started off one day when I got to my prison at FCI Miami. I was immediately pulled into a room by the SIS department. For those of you that don't know, the SIS is the investigative force of the prisons. They're kind of like the detectives. You don't want to be on their bad side. Immediately, I was pulled into a deep, dark crevice of a room, and things were said without saying them that I better not talk to the media. That if I have any conversations with the media, or I want to have any conversations with the media, there was a process that I needed to go through. I went through that process, and I was thrown into the SHU. The SHU is a specialty housing unit, or segregation housing unit, some places call it. And I was met again by SIS, who had a packet of 2 inches thick, and it was a dossier on my fiance's social media, screenshots of her social media. And they said that the SIS told me directly that we are being monitored by the counterterrorism unit, and they have to answer to the counterterrorism unit every day and do reports on me and other J6ers that were being housed. They had screenshots of past social media that she had made, things of accounts that she no longer had that weren't even politically involved. And it got so bad with them telling us that the CTU telling the prison to put us in the SHU, stop us from talking to family members, that officers within the prison finally stopped following their orders. And they were more privy with us with information. They would show us things. There's only so much I can say, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but we were told that we were labeled as terrorists, and they had, like I said, the paperwork on my fiance. I could not receive any letters that weren't scrutinized by the counterterrorism unit first. They had to read all my mail, all my email. All the books that I would order had to be approved by the counterterrorism unit of the or of the Bureau of Prisons. I was not allowed to have current newspapers. All my newspaper subscriptions, because the CTU said so, had to be held with 3 to 5 days. Now, what sense that makes, I have no idea, but this isn't normal treatment of your average prisoner in the Bureau of Prisons.
Did you get the feeling that what was being done to you, and then sort of the incongruous nature of your personality, not being a domestic terrorist or acting in the way that they assumed, do you think that ended up radicalizing some of the people that were in charge of watching you and on the guard shifts for you?
I know it did. There was a few officers that did not like Trump, did not vote that way, did not like me, or they did not like the idea of the Proud Boys, and these officers came to me and said, at some point in my stay, I had you pegged wrong. You guys pissed off somebody really high up. What's being done to you guys is not fair. We don't approve of it. And there was one situation where I was told I was constantly had to take. There was prisoners that failed drug tests that never got a second drug test their whole stay. I got one every other month, sometimes 2 in a day. And so it wasn't random with me. And officers were like, "What the hell's going on there?" And this was coming from the CTU. And one time, an officer got the piss test, was called me up to the office to take it, to give an idea of who this officer had 32 gold teeth. Okay. And this officer called me in the bathroom, and when they were about to do the paperwork and hand me the cup, there was a pause, and I'm facing this way, and I turn around, and he's reading this paper, and he's looking at this cup, and he goes, "Ramey, do me a favor. Go stand outside." And I go outside. He's in the bathroom. He calls another officer in the bathroom. They come out and he goes, "Ramey, I marked this as good. You're good. Go back to your unit." 2 days later, that officer came to me and he said, "Ramey, you were being set up. I don't know who or why. There was that cup that they're supposed to be sealed when they give me yours. Not only was yours open, but there was a piece of Suboxone in the cup." And he's like, "That's why I told you to just leave, because that cup came directly from SIS." And he's like, "I don't agree with this shit. I don't sign up for this shit." And that's that. He's like, "Watch your back, Ramey."
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that there's some people in there that saw that what was happening was wrong, even if they're not going to speak about it. So they were doing some subtle protection. Is that kind of, and I understand that, protecting who those people were as well.
Yeah. I wish there was more people like the suspendables that said, "Fuck it. Just, this is right. And this is what I believe in." I wish I saw more of that in the guys and some of the women in the BOP. But I cannot say that there's bad people in there. There's some really good men and women in the BOP. And if they are watching, you know where to tell people to look. You know where to shine the light. And if it's a matter of your pension, some of you I know are coming up on that time. Get that pension, but don't forget what you know. And let's try to make this country great again, because there are good men and women in the Bureau of Prisons.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I think there's decent people everywhere. I think there's people that solve problems in their own way, or maybe they don't see what we think they do, or they do, and they try to resist it their own way. And, I try to be pretty forgiving about people's ability to do it. Also, people see what happened to people like me, and they don't want to get out there and have that happen to them. And I can't blame them. It's not like you're going to get made whole. It's not like something's going to get fixed. So it's just whatever you can live with on your own. You said you became aware of my story and some of the other guys' story. I'm very interested. You obviously follow the news pretty rigorously, and you're getting old newspapers. What suspendable stories were coming to you while you were in prison, if any?
It was actually my fiance that was that really got in touch with your guys' story. And I guess when Steve Friend started blowing the whistle and started coming out, I was hearing stories about him, and people throughout the J6 world, they would mail me in Epic Times articles and stuff like that, albeit late, but I'd get to read them. And Steve Friend was the first one that I got to hear his story. I ordered his book and read it. And it's like vindicating, because it's somebody in law enforcement that's defending you. And then I learned about your guys' testimony, and I was able to watch that when you guys testified in front of Congress. And it was all from inside the prison walls. If it wasn't for my fiance keeping up and kind of filling me of what was going on with you guys, I probably wouldn't have known. But then you guys became you in particular became a very active voice in the J6 community for calling things out for what they were. And there was a lot of things you had said that I was told that you said that I really agreed with, and was glad that you said it. So, yeah.
Well, it helps that I'm friends with guys like Steve Baker, and, he's been a good advocate, I think, for a fair voice when it comes to what happened on January 6th. That there was obviously some people that got involved in some things. It's why I'm interested in what you had to say, especially the fact that you say, look, I did something I'm not real proud of, and I own it. And that's good. I think people need to do that. I also think that if we're being honest, and you had done that during July of 2020, then nobody would ever know your name, and your fiance would have never had to worry about you coming home. It would have been not a problem. And I only know that because I was in DC through the entire summer of 2020, and I saw what happened there, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. And if anything, it would have showed up in Superior Court, which is the local version. District is the federal for my audience that's listening. And, they got bigger problems in DC than some guy who pepper sprayed a cop. Maybe, you might get a slap on the wrist. You might catch probation. You might end up, maybe you'll do a little bit of time on there for, a couple weeks or a couple months to try to straighten you out and scare you straight, because they don't like having that happen. But shoot, man, Secret Service guys, they were getting hit in the head with bricks, which is a deadly weapon. And a bunch of them went to the hospital. And as far as I know, there wasn't significant amounts of arrests, and there certainly wasn't anybody that was prosecuted at the level that you guys were. So it's interesting. Tell me about after the election, sort of the process between election, the pardon, and during the inauguration, and maybe in like the last couple of months as you've kind of regained a regular footing in life, and now you're sitting in a cool looking studio that your girl built you.
Well, we're finding it very hard to find gainful employment and income. It's already hard if you go through the prison process and now you're a felon. But when your face has been plastered all over TV, you've been called a domestic terrorist, even people that don't agree with that are going to be reluctant to hire you. So we find a struggle, but at the same time, this is America, and it's the land of opportunity, and you can create something from nothing. And so that's what me and my fiance and some of the guys that I had the luxury of being incarcerated with are doing. We've started a company called WeTheJ6ers.com, where we want to get off the J6 story and start to educate and show America from coast to coast how the Patriot Act is culpable for what we watched happen to Donald Trump, what we seen happen to J6ers. And we want to expose the Patriot Act and talk about how we can get it to end at least its portion of utilization against the American people. The FISA courts and all this, people need to understand what it is, how it came into fruition, and what parts of it that need to be completely eliminated. So that's a focus of our work. And we hope to, I got like people like Enrique Tarrio, Kelly Meigs of the Oath Keepers, Robert Morris, who's got another amazing story, Army Ranger, another good guy that I served my time with that I consider a brother. People that can articulate themselves and understand how dangerous the Patriot Act is. We hope to tour the country and show that. And we hope to provide some of these guys and girls with some gainful employment while doing so. Because for the rest of our lives, I think Enrique said it perfect. People on the left are going to call us terrorists. Some of the people on the right are going to call us heroes. And we're neither of those things. We're just people that love this country very much. The J6ers, we are one eclectic group of people. We're from different, but the one thing we all have in common is I truly believe that the real ones, they love this country very much, and want to continue doing that. Yeah.
That's an interesting statement, because you saw some of the worst things that America has thrown out on people. I mean, I would call it where I think it was a betrayal of the system. So that's Kyle's opinion. I'll just own that opinion. How does that not make you feel cynical, jaded? How does it not make you feel that this country, left you in the lurch and gave you a different set of justice, or that there's no such thing as fairness? How do you move on with that, especially being in freaking prison? And if people are trying to set you up and telling you, hey, you're being set up by the people that you're, maybe previously your tax dollars were funding.
Yeah. Well, We've gotten to a bad spot in America. I truly believe that there is a Marxist agenda that's infiltrated a lot of our establishments, our Justice Department, our colleges, our schools, and I blame us. I blame me. I didn't. How many school board elections have I showed up to before January 6th? Before how many people that ran for mayor of my city did I actually get involved and find out who they were? And the answer is damn near none. Mm-hmm. So I look at the state of where we're at and what we went through, and we fell asleep at the wheel. But this country is so incredible, and we are so privileged and blessed to live in it, that even at our weakest state that we allowed to happen, we have the opportunity to pick it up and start something new and try to get it back on track. And if we don't, then what's the point? Like, it's one opportunity that God has given me where I have a chance to leave the world a better place, and I found it, whatever that looks like. And things may be bad now, but it's not worth giving up on. You know, there's been a lot of relationships that I have with people that things happened that were bad, but, you know, because of honesty, truth, and calling things for what they were and being willing to address the issues, I was able to save that relationship. And my relationship with my country is no different.
That is decidedly positive for the scenario that you've just laid out over the last hour and a half or so.
Oh, it's not going to be pretty, and I'm not going to guarantee success.
I understand all that, but even to have that mindset right now, do you have days when you feel a little bit less optimistic as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all the time. All the time. Every other news cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. What is I guess that's I'll leave with that thought. Like, what keeps you from the sort of the darker instincts? I certainly have them, and I can imagine that yours are at least as intense as mine are, to just say, this place is screwed. And the things that have happened, they may not be, there's no recovery from it, because once you've seen what the machine will do, and it'll spit up somebody that should have gotten a far more lenient situation, you know, spits up guys that I know that didn't do anything wrong at all, spits up other J6ers that literally just showed up and walked around, or maybe they walked in the Capitol with some pretty girls like Joe Biggs tells me he did.
Ethan Nordine I don't think Ethan Nordine's that pretty of a girl, but
he said he was in there with some Italian gals that had showed up the second time when he went to go pee or something. But anyway.
Knowing Joe Biggs, it's probably true. Like you don't pay attention to that guy for 2 minutes, and he's gone, and he comes back, and he's wearing a $50,000 fur coat. He has no idea where he got it, and he's hanging out with Madonna.
He's got new friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you step from the darker instinct of it and end up where you're at right now, which, like, you know, it's refreshing. It's refreshing for me.
It's moments like this that just happened yesterday. I was in the studio and we were interviewing the in her age and weight bracket. She's the 6th highest ranked jiu-jitsu fighter in the nation right now. And she's 11 years old, and she has to fight boys because there's not enough girls for her to go up in the rankings. So she has to fight boys. And this 11-year-old, when asked, you know, what's the difference of you fighting boys versus a boy pretending to be a girl that's competing against girls? And this 11-year-old, with no help or no coaching from her father or nothing like that, she said, because it's morally wrong. I know that what I'm getting myself into by fighting a stronger boy, and a boy pretending to be a girl is just wrong. And what's worse is their parents that allow this to happen. And she's 11. And she saw this on her own. So there's still hope. There's still hope. And if we give up on this amazing experiment that Thomas Jefferson, Sam, these people were 22 years old. I'm 41 and haven't even accomplished a third of what they did by 21. This country was founded by really great men with really great philosophies. An 11-year-old is still fighting for them, unbeknownst to her. Mm-hmm. She's told all this shit that, you know, boys can be girls and you have to accept that. And this 11-year-old says, no. In fact, she even said, Kyle, I want to fight one of them so I can make them go back to their boys division. You know, I want to fight one of the training.
Don't play in my division.
I want to choke them out and make them go back. That's her. She wants to do that. So there's still hope, because that 11-year-old is going to be the future.
Yeah, you know what I heard from that, though, having an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. My instinct is that there's a dad and a mom behind that girl that have been properly indoctrinating her to reality, which,
Yeah.
that is where the hope is. And then a kid showing you that it's working. I can get behind that. If not for our kids, what the hell? Are you married yet? Is that coming up soon? Are you guys going to make this work?
It's going to have to, because I tell you this right now, I'm going to give a piece of advice for all your male listeners out there. Mm-hmm. If you ever want to know if the woman in your life is right for you, hear me out. Go to prison for a few years. If you get out and she has held down the fort and she took care of you when you were in, and I let her go, Kyle. When I got arrested and I was sitting in Fort Lauderdale jail, I said, babe, this is not your burden. I did this. You go be free. You live your life. The next day, she got the matching tattoo that I happened to have on my back to show she stood in solidarity with me. And she never looked back, bro. She held me down like there was no tomorrow. So there is no doubt in my mind that we're getting married. We want to try to finagle and see if we can make it happen at Mar-a-Lago. And it might sound crazy, but I think this is a real possibility. So we're going to see. Right now, we're having fun together and we're growing our business. We're starting a new business together. And we're going to start from the ground up and replenish what the locust ate.
That was a good way of phrasing that. I pray for that, and I hope that happens sooner than later. Do you have a deadline if the Mar-a-Lago thing doesn't work out? We're going to pull the trigger either way?
We just don't want to do a summer wedding because we live in South Florida. We want to keep it in Florida. And,
that's cowardly. Come on now.
Winter on a Florida beach, man, on the Gulf of America. I don't know. That sounds pretty good.
I got married in the middle of the summer. My wife and I got married in the middle of July, like dummies, in Texas, and it was as hot as it could be. We went to a place that was called the Wildflower Barn, and it was supposed to be a field of wildflowers that they were all growing. When we got there, it was just burned. It was all brown and dead. And she's such a champ. She just went like, well, that's it. We have to grow wildflowers in our lives, then we can't have them.
There you
here,
go.
so.
At least you didn't read into things too much,
You know what? Like you just said, though, when you get the right person around you, when you've got your person there that's willing to go through whatever it is. I just went through a deposition sitting with an attorney, and he tried to, hammer me with some stuff. And I said, he goes, how would your wife feel about the things that you're saying? I said, my wife laughs about stuff that we're talking about right now because my wife is my person. There's no daylight between us. That's what a spouse is. That's what a married couple looks like when they're standing in solidarity. I was like, there's no secrets. Yeah. If I say something crappy on Twitter, if I go on social media and make a nasty post, she'll go, I don't like that you do it that way, but I know that you know how to do this, and this is not my world. So have at it. Tell me what's funny later. Share a meme.
Yep. The things that used to irritate other women about me are the things she loves the most about me. So that's how I know.
No, that's exactly it. It's right there. I actually sent my buddies a video today when we were driving it. We're pulling into the Costco parking lot. Sometimes I give my wife a hard time about driving in parking lots, which is necessary. She used to be a whiz, man. She's from New York originally. She could do a U-turn and parallel park from the U-turn, which is wild to watch. And people would be like, damn, is that someone from the future? Like, what is that? Now she's driving a minivan and worried about, whether or not she's going to hit the cart, and she's got kids in the back and all the other things. We're driving. I look over and she goes, what's going on with that lady? And I go, what? And I see this woman and she's walking really strangely. And I go, oh, that's AI. And she busts up laughing. She goes, what? I go, yeah, that's AI. That's not even a real person. You're not even seeing that. So now I just do social media jokes to her in real life when we see stuff. The same things you would see if you saw a weird video. I just claim stuffs are AI. And then we saw it later and she goes, hey, the robot is from Germany. And I looked around. I go, what are you talking about? She was like, the AI lady. She's actually selling something in the aisle over there. And she claims she's from Germany. I was like, that's made up. That's not even real. She cracks up again. When people get you, they get you. When they're willing to hold it down, yeah, I don't recommend everybody go to prison. We should put a caveat on that. Don't go to prison to find out if it's the right lady. But
you have a real one.
Damn it, that's proof positive, if nothing else. Tell people about the website. Tell people if you have a social media handle you want to plug that they can follow you. If people want to hit you up and ask for stories of encouragement. If they're a J6 and they want to connect with you, what's the best way?
Absolutely. I'm on X at The American Rise. I got a new show on Enrique Tarrio's Warboy Studios where I talk about Marxism and cultural issues in America and make fun of liberals nonstop. So if you don't like that, you're going to hate my show. I still encourage you to watch it. WeTheJ6ers.com is our new project where we're trying to get the stories out of the men and women that were deeply involved in the J6 witch hunt trials. and some very intimate things that we have not come public with that we're offering, and also exposing the Patriot Act. So check out wethej6ers.com and book one of my speakers. They got a story to tell.
Outstanding. We'll put all that stuff, links in the show description so people can find them. How frequently are you doing the American Rising?
Well, see, I have this condition called ADHD, so very sporadic. I haven't really come up with a set schedule yet. So I'm sure I go live at least once a week and throw my shows up a couple of times. I just got done recording one with a very fascinating individual, a real journalist who wrote a book called The Manchurian Journalist about exposing CIA operative Lawrence Wright in our media sphere. It's a pretty good book. So, whenever sporadically, no set schedule, just follow the page and hit that notification button.
Love it. It worked for Sean Ryan. He was able to get away with doing, I think he did like 9 shows in 18 months.
Is that what
that's how he launched.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully,
some people hit it right where it needs to be. Barry, thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation. We'll make sure people can follow you, and the links are below. And we'll chat again. What you guys are doing over with the Warboy Studio thing, if nothing else, I like having people that got a microphone that I can hear really clearly. You guys all have interesting stories, so we'll do that. And if you want to feed more people that are part of your little conglomerate there, I'd love to chat with them as well.
Sure, anytime. Thanks for having me, Kyle. Appreciate you giving us a voice.
All right, buddy.
Cheers, mate.
That was the Sunday Sit Down with Barry Ramey, and I'm Kyle Seraphin. Thanks for watching the program. We put these out on Sunday afternoon so that you can enjoy them throughout your week, whenever it's most convenient, or you got a long drive coming up. Make sure that you are subscribing to our channels if you can. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You can find us on YouTube at Kyle Seraphin. Same thing on X at Kyle Seraphin, or over on Locals at KyleSeraphin.com. If you guys want to share the link, all you got to do is type in KyleSeraphinShow.com and send it to someone. You can see how easy this is. It's always my name. Let's keep these things going. I look forward to seeing you at 0930 Eastern Time, first thing in the morning for Monday through Friday, our political commentary, a little bit of humor, and we try to get through our week with the most educated and skeptical that we can do it. Have a great day. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.